So far, we've walked through three of the four quadrants of archetypal motivation. Each one represents a different psychological drive that brand can help people satisfy. Some brands promise belonging, some promise power, and some promise connection. But the final quadrant taps into something even deeper. This is the quadrant of self-fulfillment. It's where brands help people become more fully themselves. Not necessarily stronger, not necessarily safer, and not necessarily more accepted, more complete. Psychologically speaking, this quadrant represents the human desire to find paradise. That doesn't mean palm trees and margaritas. It means clarity, freedom, peace, and discovery. It's the moment when people feel like they've stepped outside the chaos of the world and into a place that reflects who they truly are. Three archetypes sit within this quadrant: the sage, the explorer, and the innocent. And each one delivers fulfillment in a different way. So let's unpack them. The first one is the sage. The sage archetype is driven by a single pursuit: truth. Sage brands exist to illuminate the world, to reveal how things work, to bring clarity to confusion. In a noisy world full of misinformation, shortcuts, and half-truths, the sage becomes a guide. Not necessarily a guru, but a guide. The sage doesn't shout, it explains. Their power comes from knowledge and wisdom. Their role is to help people understand the world more clearly. Think about how this shows up in brand behavior. For instance, sage brands educate. They teach, they publish insight, they simplify complexity. They help people make better decisions because they understand the situation more deeply than anyone else. And when a brand behaves like a sage consistently, something very powerful happens. People begin to trust it. They begin to trust what they put out, the knowledge, and the thinking. Not because it's flashy, not because it's emotional, because it's credible. The sage fulfills the human need for clarity and wisdom. It helps people navigate uncertainty with confidence. And in a world that often feels chaotic, that clarity feels a lot like paradise. The second archetype within this quadrant is the explorer. Where the sage seeks truth, the explorer seeks freedom. The explorer archetype is fueled by curiosity. It refuses to be confined. It rejects stagnation. Explorer brands exist to help people break out of the ordinary. They invite people to go further, see more, experience life more fully. But here's the critical insight. Exploration is not always physical. Yes, it can mean travel and adventure, and sometimes it does. But it can also mean self-discovery, trying something new, expanding your perspective, escaping the routine. Explorer brands are catalysts for that expansion. They give people permission to wander, to question, to pursue their own path instead of the one everyone else expects them to follow. Behaviorally, explorer brands feel open. They feel adventurous and unconstrained. They don't tell people who to be. They encourage people to find out for themselves through getting out there and exploring the world, wherever that may be. And when people connect with that feeling of autonomy, they experience something extremely powerful, and that is freedom. The explorer fulfills the human need for autonomy and discovery. It helps people feel like the world is wide open again. The third and final archetype within this quadrant is the innocent. The innocent is a really interesting one because I think it's oftentimes hard to really pin down. But if the sage offers clarity and the explorer offers freedom, the innocent offers something even more primal, and that is a sense of peace and balance. The innocent archetype promises a return to simplicity. It reminds people of a world before the chaos happened, before the stress, before the endless complexity of modern life. Innocent brands create spaces that feel pure. They feel optimistic, safe. They reconnect people to the belief that things can be good again, that the world can still be joyful, that life doesn't have to be cynical to be realistic. Behaviorally, innocent brands, they feel warm and genuine and clean. They avoid sarcasm and negativity. They lean into the optimism. They remove friction instead of adding more. The experience becomes effortless, comforting, and hopeful. And when people encounter a brand like that, they experience a feeling that's incredibly rare today: relief. The innocent fulfills the human need for optimism and harmony. It gives people a temporary escape from the pressure of modern life, a moment where everything simply feels right again. Paradise, even if for only a moment, is worth it. And that's what the innocent really delivers. So why does this quadrant matter? Self-fulfillment quadrant represents the highest level of human aspiration. These archetypes are not about survival, they're not about status, and they're not even really about connection. They're about becoming the person someone believes they are meant to be. The sage helps people understand the world. The explorer helps people experience the world. And the innocent helps people feel at peace in the world. Different pathways, but very similar end results. And it's basically the same destination, a sense of fulfillment. And when a brand delivers that consistently, it becomes something far more powerful than a product or service. It becomes part of a person's identity, because people don't just choose brands for what they do. They choose them for what those brands help them become. So, closing out the archetype framework overall, because this is the fourth of all four. Across the four quadrants, we've mapped 12 archetypes. Each one reflects a different human motivation, different ideals, different psychological drivers, different emotional promises. But the real power of archetypes is not in labeling a brand. It's in understanding the role the brand plays in a person's life. When that role is clear, behavior becomes clear, choices become clear, messaging becomes clear. And of course, the overall brand experience becomes even more clear. And clarity is what separates strong brands from forgettable ones. So if you take one lesson from this entire masterclass series, let it be this: don't chase tactics. Don't chase trends. Understand the human ideal your brand exists to deliver. Then behave like that archetype relentlessly. That's how brands stop being more interchangeable. That's how brands become incredibly meaningful. And that's how brands earn their place in the lives of everyone they seek to talk to. So finding out about these archetypes is one layer. Learning how to use them is a completely different aspect. Because a lot of times brands and agencies and strategists, they misuse these archetypes severely. So it starts by understanding what they represent from a quadrant level. And now we can dig into each and every one of those archetypes in more depth, give you examples of how they manifest within brands across the spectrum of industries and even characters. And then we can start to apply, how do you use archetypes to drive stronger purposes, and then everything else that derives on top or from that purpose and is built on top of it from a brand perspective. So thanks for listening. Please do subscribe and share this wherever you can. Really want to get the word out. And if you haven't picked up a copy of Mass Behaving or the Archetype card deck, I highly suggest you do. It is a deep dive into all things archetypes and how to use them for branding. Until next time, cheers.